And the first one I thought was very interesting. Paul pointed us to the Usenix page, all these talks from Usenix, and this one is very interesting. There was a research report I read about 10 years ago where they cracked a 512-bit RSA key by lowering the power supply so that the calculation would make an error. And what these guys did was they just passively scanned the internet to look for invalid signatures, RSA signatures on files, on things like HTTPS servers. And they found a lot of them. They found over 1,700 invalid signatures, and they found almost 100 of them with a combination of passive and active scanning where they were able to factor it. And in fact, there was a fun calculation, which hopefully now here's the slides. Now let me find this one that shows the way they actually do the RSA signature. It uses this thing called the Chinese remainder theorem. This might be it. Yeah, this is what happens. You're trying to calculate the RSA signature. And it turns out that for performance reasons, they don't do it the way we did it. What they do is they calculate these two pieces, one part mod P and one part mod Q, and then combine them, just because that's faster. But what that means is, if you make a mistake in one of these, when you multiply them together, you'll get something that has a common factor of P or Q compared to that and the real signature. And so they're able to, if your TLS version is 1.2 or earlier, the transmission gives you all the information you need to calculate the other number, and you have two numbers with a common factor of either P or Q, and you can easily solve that. So basically, these HTTPS servers leak P and Q, and they found a bunch of them that do leak it, including Baidu.com, a bunch of web servers, and they found a bunch of other devices, like VPN devices, that leak it, and they all do because their hardware is just kind of faulty. They run it through a hardware cryptographic signer, and that hardware is just not very well built, and it drops a bit sometimes, and they're not validating the signatures before they send them out. So I thought that was very clever and very interesting, and particularly relevant to this cryptography class. So another thing you might want to know is that OpenVPN, the idea of OpenVPN, is one of the most common VPN clients. You're supposed to be hiding what you do from somebody you don't trust, like your government or something. And if you want to block people using OpenVPN, what they showed is the pattern of packets in VPN has simple fingerprints, so it's very easy to block the use of OpenVPN. Even if you don't have the key or anything, you can't open it, but you can detect when people are using it and then block it. So they were able to make an identifier that would identify 85% of OpenVPN flows with almost no false positives. So it doesn't conceal the nature of the traffic very well, and that means things like the Great Firewall of China can easily block it, and I suppose the firewalls in Russia now, too. This, I thought, would be of great interest to students. This is the University of Arizona, and this guy seems to be cool. He ran the DEF CON Capture the Flag competition, the teacher here, Zardas. So he's got a team of people, and it's a free penetration testing class that anybody can join. So it sounds great. I'll throw it in the chat. I think a lot of people might want. Yes, some people have tried it, said Phone College is great. It sure sounds great. I haven't tried it, but it sounds great. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Now they're talking about putting servers in orbit to avoid pollution. This sounds really stupid to me. I mean, there's plenty of solar power you can get down here, but anyway, they're talking about how that might be better. I'm not quite sure I see why that's better, but they are thinking about it. A activist investor is complaining to Google, saying they're paying too much for the engineers, they have too many staff, they could fire them and cut the costs and make a higher profit that way. And that might be true. It certainly is true that for a long time Google had so much money that they just approved everything and never cut anything, and it was very luxurious. And over the last few years, they've been running out of money and eliminating benefits and canceling unprofitable programs and such. So they are tightening their belt. A Chinese rocket fell apart on the way back in, and it's spewing out 50 pieces of space junk, and it seems it did it a few hundred kilometers up, but they seem not worried about it staying in orbit and colliding with other satellites, is what I mostly hear about. They're just worrying about it landing and hitting somebody on the head, which is a pretty low risk, I think. And China's been doing this for a long time. Uncontrolled flight where they don't even tell people when it's coming down or where it's coming. They just assume it has a low chance of hitting somebody, which is true. Not a zero chance, but a low chance. So Microsoft has issued their first sexual harassment and gender report, talking about an awful lot of sexual harassment complaints and people that got fired for them and such. And so, this may constitute some progress. Then at least you can have some measure of how much this they're detecting and what they're doing about it, perhaps. Huge problem in technology. The electric vehicle charging infrastructure is just as bad as you might think it would be from the Internet of Things devices. People are rushing these things out as fast as they can, and they're cutting corners on security. So they are based on out-of-date Linux versions with known vulnerabilities. They have built-in hard-coded credentials in the code. They have open USB ports you can use to replace the firmware. And so on. And this guy here, they were able to interrupt charging using a software-defined radio with less than 1 watt of power from 47 meters away. So they can intercept it. It sounds to me like you can have fun with one of those portable USB hacking devices, that the Flipper Zero. That some of my friends have those. They're devices that can do a lot of wireless attacks, including the simple record and replay and a lot of others. And you can use them to hack all kinds of wireless devices. And here's another Amazon flaw. Amazon has a database storage where you can store data in an Amazon cloud-managed database, but it has a backup feature. You can make a backup of your data, and what people don't understand is by default that backup is world-readable. And so if you back up the data is full of personal data, you're exposing it world-readable. This reminds me of the Amazon S3 buckets that were by default world-readable for years, and everybody kept putting data in them without realizing the whole world can see them, and Amazon appears to have done it again. They make it so there's a backup factor option, and when you run the backup, the end result is world readable, and apparently that's not clear to people, so all kinds of personal data is being exposed that way again. And RDS snapshots. Paul, it runs Paul Security Weekly, and his co-workers are experts on UEFI security, and they had a lecture about that today. It is incredibly complicated what goes on in your machine when it boots up. It has multiple stages of boot up, and so in your processor, there's kernel, there's ring 3 for user code, ring 0 for kernel code, and there's another whole category of code called TPP or something. I haven't got the right letters. There's some other code, platform security code. I don't know if I can find the acronym somewhere in here. SMM, a security management code, is another mode, and this does something having to do with boot up, like turn on the power, and it turns out like something like 80 executables run in this secure mode before the machine boots up, before you have antivirus, or even the operating system is running, and it is very difficult to put any cryptographic signatures on that stuff or any security on that, and that's what UEFI attempts to do. And there are rootkits that infect your machine at the SMM level, and these things would be almost impossible to detect and remove. Now, all the ones that are known are public proofs of concept like this for research. But in principle, there could be spreading UEFI rootkits, and if they got out there, they would be really hard to remove, even harder to remove than kernel rootkits. And so there's a lot of concern there about the how to secure this layer, and that's what they're doing at Paul's company. I think it's Ubiquity or something. I forget the name of the company. Anyway, so that's the stuff I wanted to tell you.